I grew up in Toronto, and then I finished high school in Hong Kong, which led me to Michigan for college. And I just decided to stay here. And then I moved to Detroit in 2007, went to law school. I did like the minimum a good son would do. I had gotten the degree, I got a job offer, and decided that, and taught myself how to cook and went into a career in the food and beverage industry. My name is John Kung, and I am a cook and content creator based in Detroit, Michigan. I've spent most of my life here being involved with the underground food scene in Detroit, and then eventually that led me into content creation. I came in 2007. Maybe 2009 was when I started blogging about the stuff that I was cooking at home, just trying to recreate dishes from my childhood memory. My first pop-up actually happened around the corner over there inside a house that used to be completely empty, and I just decided to make satay skewers, and there were no walls. It was all down to the studs. It was very of the moment. And then my next pop-up happened in what is now called the Metropolitan, but before was called the Harlequin Cafe, and there I was making Chinese braised oxtails, doing noodle bowls. It was very neighborhood focused, and it was really all about sharing the food that I really loved with people who had never had it before. And that eventually led me to working with other chefs that were coming in from all over the country to open up their restaurants here. So adaptation is completely rooted in the immigrant experience because that is just how we had to survive. And so that just gives you access to this forced creativity. I wrote an entire Chinese American cookbook off the back of Asian and Chinese grocery stores in Michigan, and I did it very, very easily in finding very obscure condiments that surprise even my mom that I have access to. I think Detroit can only benefit from the creativity that comes from a diasporic AAPI community. It's just the things that we make are so beautiful and so obviously delicious, and are so informed by a different kind of experience.
I first learned about Detroit through media, articles, music, stories, and those stories drew me to the city before even having stepped foot in Michigan. My name is Alessandra Carrion. I identify as a Filipina-Italian woman who also serves as a commissioner and maybe also owned a pizzeria and maybe also spent many, many years in a sustainability job. My father was born in the Philippines. My mother was born in Italy. I don't have a hometown. I moved around every 2 to 3 years growing up. My family is dispersed around the world that I knew I wouldn't be able to choose one single place and be close to everyone I love. So in choosing a place that resonated with my interests, my values, I moved to Detroit. And as a person who moved here in her 20s, one of the things that I have had to internally reconcile is that I am a Filipina, and I am an Italian, and I am an American. I owned and operated a pizzeria in Southwest Detroit for many years. Growing up, my family in Naples, Italy had a pizzeria and a trattoria. The pizzeria was also a place that I wanted to ensure was available to my Filipino-American community members. It served pizza, but it was also committed to telling stories of people, cultures, cuisines who may not have been directly in the room at that time. Detroit Filipino Supper Club came about pretty spontaneously and organically when Shane Bernardo, Danielle Daggio, and I heard about each other without even really knowing each other. We were all craving a space for us to enjoy Filipino food together or Filipino community. Detroit Filipino Supper Club members share commitment to social justice, to food justice, to art, to celebration, to family. It's my own reminder I'm not alone.
When I moved to Detroit, the Filipino Supper Club didn't exist, and we slowly but surely found each other, kept meeting with one another, and growing it in different ways. It became the climate that I needed, that I didn't know could exist. I found a lot of home, found a lot of family.
My name is RV Mendoza. I live in Detroit.
My name is Danielle Daggio. I live in Detroit on the east side, in a neighborhood called Pingree Park. I originally grew up in New Jersey and then went to school in New York. I graduated, got placed in Detroit to do a full-time volunteer gig at like a social justice theater. And I didn't know where Detroit was at all. It's been home since 2010. I work for Keep Growing Detroit, where we provide seeds and transplants to over 2,200 farms and gardens in the city of Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park. A third of Detroit is vacant. It's a rare opportunity in comparison to other cities to be able to have the space to grow the food. There's a great Hmong community in Detroit that grows bitter melon, Thai basil, French bitter eggplant, and a lot of foods that ordinarily would be imported in from someplace else that they're growing right here in Detroit. For Filipino Americans, the food is the way in which I can connect to my culture. If I have the foods, I can still engage in this heritage, this piece of me that is otherwise lost because of disconnection from where my family is. Having this food, being able to grow it, recreates this deep understanding of where that food is coming from, not just in the way in which it's prepared, but how it's grown and where it's grown. It was quite a revelation for me to learn that you could grow ginger here. In my mind, like, ginger is something that's always imported in from some tropical place, but to know that I could grow it here in Michigan, that means that I can be here too. If I cultivate the climate that I want to be in, it's gonna work out.
I've been waiting for the Jollibee opening for over 2 years since they announced it. I love the fried chicken, love the gravy, and then also this peach mango pie. My name is Jonathan Peregrino. I'm a pastry chef here in Detroit, Michigan. I went to pastry school in the Philippines about 5 years ago. And my counterparts and I would always, be looking for lunch. And Jollibee and fried chicken is a staple out there. We're about 45 minutes away from Detroit, or almost an hour away from downtown. This is where a lot of the Filipino population is. I honestly had no idea how big the Filipino community was here in the Detroit metro area. As a pastry chef, sort of do pop-ups and things like that and collaborations. And it's through some of those collaborations I started to see some of the quantity of the Filipinos, but to see everyone come out and to show that support right from day one is amazing. With Jollibee, how they had their fried chicken. People know what fried chicken is, but you try it and it's completely different than what you might have had. When I went to pastry school originally, it was like, oh, am I gonna make the fancy croissants and all these like entremets and these really pretty things? Throughout the pandemic, I started trying to figure out, like, what do I miss? What can't I find? And I started reverting to the stuff that I grew up with, the Filipino baked goods. And that's what I started to make. I am opening up my first shop here in Detroit. I'm able to do two things with that. One, share my love for cooking and baking, but then also share my heritage and my culture. Being through the food and sort of some of the flavor profiles I'm able to represent. Being a Filipino American, first generation, like, I'm sort of wanting to help bridge that gap in a way of the folks that grew up on Filipino or foods or might be from the Philippines, but with folks that have never been exposed to them.
Food is the great unifier. It brings everyone together because we have to eat so many times a day, and it's just a good conversation starter. Like, what is this? What am I eating? The food I make is part Vietnamese, part Chinese. Do I think my food is completely traditional Vietnamese? No. Is it traditional Chinese? No. I'm a blend of both. And also, I am American. So if I put cheese in my banh mi, like, my mom's gonna hate me, but it might taste good. My name is Mighty Huynh. I was born and raised in California. My parents, they fled during the war. So my older sister was born in Vietnam. I was born in the US. As an Asian American, there is a duality. My parents wanted us to be American enough, but not too American. You can speak English, you can learn how to speak it, but when you come home and you speak Vietnamese, you speak your native language. I love that I can use the ability to cook 2 types of cuisine and blend 2 cultures with my children and with people. I'm giving people access to the food I grew up with, but also that I have not seen here in Michigan myself. I don't have like formal kitchen experience. I didn't go to culinary school. The food community and I have all intersected based on Instagram. That's how I started finding everything out and talking to people. I was making my milk bread. This was before Instagram stories was a thing. So I would post them on my Instagram page. And then I met James Regato from Mabel Gray. And then I also met Joe Vaughn from Frame when he was opening it. And they offered me a chance to come cook there. I got to learn how to really cook and make food for a large group of people, how to do it efficiently. And I think obviously that's how I met Jonathan from JP Makes and Bakes. And we wound up having some mutual friends together and just watching him build like a Filipino bakery. Food really is what connects me. I would say love is food. And ultimately, that's how my parents express love to us. In Vietnamese culture, in Asian culture, it is hard to express love. And one of the ways like Vietnamese people express love is through a plate of like peeled fruit. My mom says when I get home, it's like, did you eat yet? I love you so much. Come sit down to eat. And I'm like, and if you say I've already eaten and I'm full, I don't want to eat, it's like you're saying you don't love them back. So you sit down, you eat. That is love. My son, Nash, he's got a big personality. He's like, do you want to try this? This is what I have. Do you want to see? Can I have that? You can have this if I can have some of that.
It doesn't matter what culture you come from within the greater Asian identity. The thing that we all have in common is that we gather around our food. We celebrate food. It is our history. It is our stories. It is our family. It's how our family comes together. Whatever family that might be, like your blood family or your chosen family, it's always around food.